been widely reported that former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was working behind the scenes to ensure that AOC would lose this bid to chair the House Oversight Committee, which made me think of something that AOC had to say about Nancy Pelosi back in 2020 when she made an appearance on The View.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, once a fiery symbol of the progressive protest movement, is now facing backlash for what many see as a shocking betrayal of her roots. In her bid to secure a leadership role on the House Oversight Committee, AOC reportedly promised to stop supporting primary challengers against Democratic incumbents, a move that directly contradicts the very mission that launched her career with the Justice Democrats. Today, Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur break down why this decision has sparked outrage among progressives and what it means for the future of the movement she once championed. OC ruins her legacy.
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez told her fellow Democrats that, she might stop supporting primary challengers to Democratic incumbents in her attempt to chair the House Oversight Committee. Now, the reporting comes from Politico, which cited 3 people familiar with her remarks. So how well did that strategy work out for her? Let's take a look.
I want to talk about this fight inside the Democratic Party between the old and the new guard over this key committee seat. It was settled today when Representative Jerry Connolly was voted the top Democrat on the Oversight Committee, beating out Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The tally came down not particularly close, 131 to 84.
Oops. Now, it's worth noting that AOC won her seat in the House of Representatives by, challenging an incumbent Democrat. Okay, that was Joe Crowley, and this happened back in 2018. Again, this means that she won her seat in Congress by challenging a Democratic incumbent. That was the whole point of the Justice Democrats. So the idea that she was willing to concede to the Democratic establishment and say that she will no longer support primary challengers to Democratic incumbents is particularly rich and also very disgusting. But, maybe complying is how leaders lead, or maybe leaders lead without complying or bending to the will of the establishment that she was elected to fight in the first place.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know what the point of the Just Democrats was, since I helped found it and I named it, and we set the rules in the first place. And number one rule, only rule we had, was you can't take corporate PAC money because we didn't want them getting sucked into the corruption of Washington.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The tally came down, not particularly close, 131 to 84. Ouch. Now remember, AOC won her seat in Congress by challenging an incumbent Democrat, Joe Crowley, back in 2018. That was the whole point of the Justice Democrats. Take on the establishment, not join ITSO for her to now promise she won't back primary challengers against Democratic incumbents. That's rich. And frankly disgusting. Maybe she thinks complying is leadership. Or maybe real leaders lead by refusing to bend to the very establishment they were elected to fight. And let's not forget, Cenk Uygur helped found the Justice Democrats, set the rules, and made the number 1 rule crystal clear. No corporate PAC money. That was to stop getting sucked into Washington's corruption. She, once hailed as a disruptor, now looks like she's walking away from her insurgent roots, all to boost her bid for oversight chair. Which leaves progressives asking, did she trade the fight against the status quo for political expediency?
In this case, I thought AOC would be good to replace Connolly, because Connolly's, I think, 74, she's 35. She's much better in media, much better in asking questions in these committee hearings, and this is oversight where we need someone strong and aggressive to actually serve that role. I thought she was a good fit for that role, so that made a lot of sense. But I didn't know that she was apparently telling, if Politico is right, that she's telling people, don't worry, I won't support any more challenges of incumbents. Well, that defeats the whole point. The point of Justice Democrats was to send in people to challenge those incumbents, to challenge the establishment, and to open the door for others so that more progressives and populists could go into Congress and we could actually topple the establishment and take over. The point wasn't to go inside and become part of the establishment and go up the ranks for your own benefit. Because if you say you're not going to challenge incumbents anymore, then there's no point. They have a massive lead in terms of the numbers of congressmen that they have. The establishment Democrats have 95% of the party. If you freeze it in place now, we will be a permanent minority. Why would you agree to that? Strategically, it makes no sense at all for the movement, but for your own career, it does make some sense. And because then all your colleagues are much nicer to you, you get along better with them, you make up pretty excuses about why you had to do it, you get a better position, it allows you to run for a higher office one day, etc. But if this was about you, then it was a giant mistake. Because I don't care about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or any of the other Just Democrats on a personal level. I don't mean that in a mean way. Whenever I've interacted with them personally, I've liked them. We got along great before weird things happened, right? But it's not my job to promote their egos or careers. I don't care about that. What I care about is passing bills. And we cannot pass these bills. And I thought we agreed when we challenged those Democratic incumbents together that we cannot pass those bills if we don't defeat the establishment. Mm-hmm. So why aren't they passing paid family leave that's polling at 84%? If you actually fought on that, it would be so easy to win. I know that in Congress, they tell you everything is impossible. Don't ever fight back. But when you agree to not fight back, when you agree not to challenge your own colleagues, you're saying I'd rather be comfortable than effective. And that defeats the entire point.
Well, that comfort came in the form of AOC losing 131 to 84. And so, look, it's been widely reported that former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was working behind the scenes to ensure that AOC would lose this bid to chair the House Oversight Committee, which made me think of something that AOC had to say about Nancy Pelosi back in 2020 when she made an appearance on The View. If you don't know what I'm referring to, this is it.
I think there's a lot of incentive to blow up disagreements in the party as like huge fights, because I think it's important for us all to recognize, and we do this in our rallies, to recognize the people who have been in this fight to allow us to have this window as we do right now. You know, Nancy Pelosi, that's Mama Bear of the Democratic Party. You know,
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's bid to chair the House Oversight Committee ended in a decisive loss to Representative Jerry Connolly, with a vote of 131 to 84. Connolly, a 74-year-old establishment Democrat battling esophageal cancer, was heavily backed by party leadership, including Nancy Pelosi, who reportedly worked the phones behind the scenes to secure his win. Even while recovering from surgery, Pelosi's priority was clear: protect the establishment. For AOC, this wasn't just a missed leadership opportunity. It also put a spotlight on the compromises she made to get there, like promising to stop supporting primary challengers. Progressives see this as nothing short of betrayal. Critics like Cenk Uygur argue that without primary challenges, progressives are locked into permanent minority status, powerless to enact real change while cementing establishment dominance. To them, AOC's shift looks less like fighting for a movement and more like career maneuvering.
Well, according to Ken Klippenstein's reporting, Mama Bear whipped votes for the challenger to AOC to chair the House Oversight Committee by whipping votes, even as she was struggling with a hip replacement surgery following a fall that she suffered from. So, we should point out that Pelosi's word is not necessarily law. So, for instance, an ally of AOC noted that another Pelosi-backed candidate, Representative Jim Costa from California, lost the steering vote to lead the Agriculture Committee on Monday, telling Axios, "Does it help or does it hurt to have Nancy Pelosi making calls for you?" But when it came to the House Oversight Committee, Mama Bear did get her way. And so that's despite concerns over Connolly's age and health. And this part of the story, in my opinion, like blows my mind even more, Cenk, because this is who Nancy Pelosi was rooting for. This is who Nancy Pelosi wants to have as chair of the House Oversight Committee. So Connolly's trademark vigor made headlines comfortable that he can take on the Trump administration despite his age and recent cancer diagnosis, multiple lawmakers told Axios. Okay. Here's what the reality is. So Connolly disclosed on November 7th that he has cancer. It's esophageal cancer, which he's currently undergoing chemotherapy treatments for. Now, Ken Klippenstein spoke to medical experts who told him that the survival rate for this specific form of cancer is extremely low. Also, the chemotherapy treatments obviously are just brutal. And despite all this, one of Connolly's top allies, Representative Don Bayer, laughably argues, Jerry's a young 74, cancer notwithstanding.
Yeah, he's young and dynamic behind the scenes. He's young and dynamic in the hospital. Look, guys, I feel terrible for him. And these guys, you got to retire at some point. Take care of yourself, brother. We want you to be better. Of course we do. But while you're in the middle of chemo is probably not the best time to lead the oversight committee. So what that shows you is that the Pelosi's of the world are still bitter after all this time at the Justice Democrats. Like, they've crushed them already. Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush are out. Marie Newman's out. The rest have bowed their heads. But it's not enough. Mama Bear's still mauling them while they think Mama Bear's their friend. Right? So look, that appearance had three different problems in that tiny little clip that we showed you. She said, we don't need huge fights in the Democratic Party. No, you're totally wrong. We definitely need huge fights. In fact, when AOC was running against Joe Crowley was one of the top 4 Democrats in the House. And you know what they said? Why is she getting primaried? We don't need these huge fights in the Democratic Party.
Right.
And back then, when she was the beneficiary of that fight, she was all for it. And look, guys, this is not a recent thing. I know that fairly soon after she won and got into Congress, when other Justice Democrats, not me, went and talked to her and asked her to help primaries against incumbents, it was like pulling teeth. Instantly, like, whoa, but that's gonna get me shot. Who cares? Who cares? What did you do? Did you think we were gonna do a polite revolution? And then if you asked politely of Mama Bear, she was gonna be like, oh yeah, my $1 billion in donors, I'll ignore them because you're so pleasant to me.
The bigger picture. The Democratic establishment isn't loosening its grip. Case in point. Nancy Pelosi reportedly boosted Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's bid for oversight chair, only to later rally support for Jerry Connolly and seal his victory. For progressives, this was a huge missed opportunity to advance their agenda on issues like paid family leave, which polls show has 84% public approval. But according to Cenk Uygur, the real damage wasn't just the loss, it was AOC's compromise. By softening her stance against incumbents, she weakened the progressive message. Instead of disrupting the machine, Justice Democrats risk becoming a safe, comfortable, and utterly ineffective wing of the Democratic Party. All at a moment when bold confrontation is exactly what voters are demanding.